Hi everyone, good evening. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Fred Campagna, and I just want to tell you everything that you need to know, or everything that we know about Helene and its potential impacts here in North Georgia. So we'll spend about 10-15 minutes talking about that. I've got a lot of graphics to show you, a lot of updates on the storm, including that it's strengthening this evening. As anticipated, that's not a surprise to us. And it's getting closer to moving into the Gulf of Mexico. It's still in the Caribbean. It has gradually strengthened all day long. Winds are now up to 60 miles an hour. Let me flip it over there and show you where Helene is right now, east of Cancun. It looks like it's either going to go right over the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, or it is going to go just to the east of there and thread the needle between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba. And it's moving west-northwest now, but a turn is likely as that storm gets into the Gulf of Mexico. There's a lot of ocean heat content. Translate that to very warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. There's probably not going to be a ton of wind shear, which tropical systems don't like. And because of that, this storm is very likely to intensify and maybe rapidly intensify at some point. We've seen rapid intensification of hurricanes often in the last several years. It's not unusual at this time of the year for that to happen because we are just a couple of weeks past the peak of the hurricane season. There's the short-term track that takes us through the next day and a half or so until 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon. But what we want to do is zoom in to show you what it may do in Georgia. And that cone of uncertainty, now it does not include Tampa. At one point it did. It's just east of Panama City at the western edge of it. And it's centered on an area that's already seen some hurricanes in the last couple of years. Perry, Steinhatchee, Florida. This one may go just west of there. Still a little bit uncertain as to exactly where it goes, but it's probably going to have a pretty big impact in Tallahassee. And unlike many storms that take a turn to the northeast and move through South and Middle Georgia and then into South Carolina or even out back out into the Atlantic Ocean, this one, as you can see, is going to go north through Georgia and then turn to the northwest. And it will be rapidly weakening on Thursday night and into Friday morning, but it will also be moving at about 30 miles an hour. And if it is a major hurricane, as it's expected to be when it makes landfall, then it is likely to still be a very strong and gusty tropical storm as it passes over our area. So let's talk about some of the first alert weather days that we have. It starts tomorrow. And you may say, well, I just looked at that map and Helene is in the southern Gulf of Mexico tomorrow. So how are we having an impact from it? We're not necessarily. We're having an impact from a front off to our west that is going to bring the risk of some rain and some thunderstorms. And it's going to tap into some of the tropical moisture that is streaming from Helene. As a result, we may see some very heavy rain coming down at times tomorrow, particularly afternoon, evening time frame, and in the 85 corridor in northwest. So that's the favored location for heavy downpours Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. Not a lock that you'll get rain, but those that get rain could pick up inches of rain tomorrow, 2 or 3 inches of rain possible in some spots. And then as we head into Thursday, the rain becomes a lot more widespread, and it will be very heavy. And the amount of moisture in the air just continues to build as the tropical system gets closer to us. So while flooding is possible for some on Wednesday, flooding becomes more likely for many by late Thursday and into Thursday night. As far as winds are concerned, even though it's going to be very wet on Thursday, the winds should not be too much of an issue through the afternoon. They start to pick up during the evening, and they peak during the overnight hours. So the strongest winds we're going to see from this storm will likely happen between about midnight and sunrise or shortly after on Thursday. Not great news. It can be kind of a harrowing situation to lose power at night, but I think that's going to happen for some people during the late night hours, hearing that wind. The exact track of the storm is going to be critical as to who gets the strongest winds, and we'll talk more about that coming up as well. Friday morning looks windy, looks wet, especially early. I think because this storm is going to be moving 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, the storm's going to be certainly winding down. Rain may be over, by 9 o'clock in the morning in Atlanta, or at least a lot lighter. Strongest winds will likely have passed by that point based on some of the current projections that we're seeing. We expect 5 to 10 inches of rain from this storm. It's no longer seems to be a situation where it's like, well, in a worst case scenario, we'll get 5 to 10 inches of rain. That seems like a most likely case scenario at this point, to get 5 to 10 inches of rain. To put it in perspective, that's about 2.5 months worth of rain if you're at the higher end of that range. And that will lead to flooding. That will lead to widespread flooding, street flooding, flash flooding, rivers, streams, creeks, all flooding as a result of that much rain in a short period of time, because that's rain that starts maybe midday Wednesday and ends by Friday morning. On the higher end of what's possible, it still looks like there's potential to get in the hardest hit areas, not our entire area, but the unlucky few could get 10 to 15 inches of rain from this system as it passes by. We're ballparking the winds right now at 40 to 60 miles an hour. I'd say if there's something that's most uncertain with this forecast at this point, it is the winds, because we don't know, one, how strong this storm is going to be at landfall. We have a feeling it's going to be close to a major hurricane, if not a major hurricane, Category 3 with winds of 115 miles an hour is the current forecast. But if it's anything over 100 miles an hour, then we're pretty likely in some parts of our area to see 40 to 60 mile per hour winds. Based on the current consensus tracks, the lower chance of getting those winds is in West Georgia. The higher chance is east of Atlanta, and especially as you get to Athens and Eatonton, Conyers area, Gainesville, northeast Georgia. Power outages are likely throughout North Georgia from this storm. It's going to take down a lot of trees. It's going to take down a lot of power lines. And the exact track of the system also will play a role in our tornado risk. To the east of a landfalling tropical system, you have a risk of spin-up tornadoes. Part of our area will probably be to the east of this storm. If the center of the storm comes right over Atlanta, that can put DeKalb County on the east of it. That can put Gwinnett County on the east of it, and everybody east of that area. So the exact track is going to be extremely important for both the wind impacts as well as the tornado risk impacts. Let me show you a couple of different graphics here. Where shall I start? You know what? We'll start with this, which is just a look at how the forecast is going to go over the next couple of days. Top left-hand side, you see the 15 miles per hour. That's the wind gusts. So winds are not a factor tonight, tomorrow, and those are for the Atlanta metro area, by the way. Notice Wednesday morning, a couple of showers, thunderstorms starting to flare up north and west of Atlanta. We did see isolated showers and storms this morning, but unlike this morning when things quieted down for most of us, it's likely that things will flare up tomorrow afternoon. So after about noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we started to see some thunderstorms developing around the Atlanta metro area, and then continuing as we went through the afternoon into the evening hours, still some scattered storms. I want you to also notice that coverage there. It doesn't cover our entire area, but those that are getting rain may be getting some heavy rain. So that's definitely something to factor in. Now notice what happens as we go from Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. The rain starts to become more widespread. Winds are still not an issue. In fact, they'll be very light. 8 o'clock Thursday, the storm will still be offshore, maybe by 100 miles or more offshore. But there's a big moisture feed that's coming out of it that's interacting with that front that is going to draw it up in our area, up in our direction, and there's going to be a lot of rain feeding into that. So we start to get into some heavier rain probably by mid to late morning on Thursday, and it just continues. Waves of rain start to come our way. By later on in the afternoon, the wind starts to pick up, and we start to get some of the outer bands of the storm system interacting now with that front. So the wind increases. There may be breaks between the rain at that point, but there will still be heavy rain that comes moving through during the overnight. Notice those winds. 30 miles an hour with a heavy band coming through Atlanta, 9 o'clock in the evening. This is, again, I'm not saying that that will exactly happen at that time, but it gives you an idea about how the wind picks up when the heavier bands of rain come through. We'll notice those numbers, those wind numbers go up after midnight, gusts over 40 miles an hour. This computer model has a track that's east of Atlanta. You can see it because I have Eatonton in the clear right there. So if you look at Eatonton on the map, notice how just to the north of it, you have very heavy rain. But in Eatonton, you have this kind of hole. That's where the center of the tropical storm is projected to be by this computer model. There are other computer models that have it a lot farther to the west and over Atlanta. So we're not quite sure exactly where that center is going to be. Climatologically, I would say that it's favored to be over Eatonton, over Athens. But this is a unique situation with this setup. And it's possible that it comes from Thomaston to Griffin to Atlanta and then to Canton and up to the northwest to Chattanooga. So we still don't know exactly how that's going to play out. By the way, look at the winds. Late Thursday night, Friday morning. Gusts up over 50 miles an hour. After getting 5 to 10 inches of rain, you start to throw some 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts into a mix, and that's going to lead to down trees, down branches, down power lines. 9 o'clock Friday morning, things are starting to quiet down for us. I want to show you potential rainfall map here. Notice how there's a very large area that's shaded in red. That's 5 inches plus. And then there are splotches where you see pink. That's 10 inches of rain. So most of us are going to be between 5 and 10 inches of rain. Some areas will get more than that, unfortunately, from this storm system. And I've had a lot of people, switch over for a quick second, and we'll go back to the maps in just a second. But I've had a lot of people, coworkers, in fact, everyone I've talked to today, I guess they think that, maybe we keep a secret forecast that we don't share with you. We definitely don't do that. But they've said, is it really going to be bad? And unfortunately, the answer is yeah, it's probably is. This is probably going to be a major weather event for North Georgia, for all of Georgia, really. Potentially the biggest weather event that we've seen in years. I would say at least going back to Zeta, probably before that. If you've been around for a while, Opal back in the 90s was a major event. So there have been some big ones in terms of tropical impacts, but this is such a unique track compared to what historically storms do when they make landfall down around Tallahassee. I'm going to show you that graphic in just a second. But the bottom line is, yeah, this is our forecast. Our confidence level is increasing in this forecast, especially for the rain. Maybe not as much for the wind because that wind is so contingent on how strong the storm is at landfall and then its track through Georgia after making landfall. But if it's a 115 mile per hour storm when it makes landfall, and say that happens around Perry, Florida, south of Tallahassee, southeast of that area, and then it moves to the north and it moves through Georgia Thursday night at about 30 miles an hour, it's not going to have time to weaken. If the center of the track goes close to Atlanta, that will bring 55, 60 mile an hour wind gusts right into the Atlanta metro area after having gotten 6 to 10 inches of rain, which could spell disaster, really. I hate to use that word, but it's probably appropriate if that is the track that plays out. All right, I want to show you, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, that historically, here's how the tracks go, right? So they all just animated on there, and I'll do it again to show you. But what I want you to watch where these tracks go. Okay, now see how so many of them are cutting through South Georgia when they make landfall around Tallahassee, where this one is expected to make landfall? Very few of them come up to Atlanta. And the 3 on here that come up to Atlanta, those are all storms that crossed Florida in central Florida from the Atlantic, then were briefly in the Gulf of Mexico, and then moved up through North Georgia. So when those storms crossed central Florida, they weakened considerably. So those storms were probably weak tropical storms and then tropical depressions as they came up over Atlanta. What's unique about this storm is that it's going to be powerful at the time that, and I'm going to overlay the track of this storm on there, and you'll notice how that line right there in the middle, you don't see many tracks that look like that line, like that cone, coming from south to north straight out of the Gulf of Mexico and straight up through the state of Georgia. So that's what makes this a unique, somewhat unprecedented situation for us in terms of a tropical system. Let me see, I got more I can show you here. This is a look at the National Hurricane Center's wind probability. And they do this pretty conservatively. So this is the odds of seeing, based on the current track, sustained winds. So there would be higher gusts over 50 miles an hour, but sustained winds of tropical storm force speed, which is 39 plus miles per hour. Now, it's all but a lock that that's going to happen, as you can see, down around Steinhatchee and Perry area, and then up to around Tallahassee. And it's very high likelihood that it's going to happen in South Georgia. So Albany area, very likely to see that. Valdosta as well. Macon area, your odds are increasing. And Atlanta area is, still 30, 40% of seeing sustained winds of 40 miles an hour. Well, let me tell you, if we get sustained winds at the airport of 40 miles an hour at Hartsfield-Jackson, there's a good chance our peak gusts will be over 55 miles an hour, at least, with a landfalling tropical system. So if these odds continue to increase as the National Hurricane Center sees it, that is cause for some considerable concern. Right now, I would say the most likely area to get these strong winds is east of Atlanta, based on the track that we're looking at. Okay, so keep that in mind if you live east of Atlanta, and particularly as you go east of, say, Conyers and east of Lawrenceville, that area, I think you have a better chance. So I'm talking about you folks in Eatonton, Athens, Gainesville, northeast Georgia area. Okay, flood watch is in effect. It starts tomorrow. And here's another thing that I think is going to happen, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And that's it, like, oh, well, I know there's a storm coming. What are they saying? Thursday night, Friday? Is that what they're saying? Yeah, that's what we're saying as far as when the center of the storm will be going overhead. But tomorrow, if you have stuff you need to bring inside, whether it's an inflatable or some other Halloween decoration, or possibly, some patio furniture, pool furniture, maybe take the grill and put it someplace a little bit safer. Whatever it is, if it's dry in the morning and you have the chance to do that, do it, because it could get really wet in some places during the afternoon tomorrow, and then you're probably not going to feel like doing it as much. And I think that what'll happen is that you'll have some people who will say, oh, well, I just hope it doesn't blow around. And it's may well blow around, and it's just going to get wet, very wet on Thursday. So if you get that opportunity tomorrow morning to take that stuff inside, definitely take it inside. So first alert weather days start tomorrow with that flood watch in effect, that is in effect until Friday. Okay, let's see. What else can I show you here? I got all kinds of graphics that we can take a look at. Again, the threats as we see them right now, I'll flash that up there while I look. Some people have been weighing in about what's going on here. So, high risk of strong winds. I would say at least a moderate risk that you'll lose power where you live. A high risk overall that some will lose power. I wouldn't be surprised if it's easily into the hundreds of thousands without electricity at some point during this storm. And our flooding risk is high. It's not often that we have a flooding risk that is just flat out high. There's many times where we're like, oh, it's, localized, and some people are going to see flooding. But I think there's a good chance many areas are going to see flooding from this storm. And our tornado risk overall is low, but it's very contingent on the track. All right, we pop in here real quick. And I'm going to get back to work in the Weather Center in just a second. I think there have been a couple of comments coming in from some people, a couple of compliments. I certainly do appreciate those. So thank you very much for that, Jason, and other people that are on there. Caleb's on here. So Robin is saying, why aren't they canceling schools? They will. I think there's a good chance that schools will be canceled in many places Thursday and Friday. I think it's a lock for a lot of schools that they will be canceled on Friday. Now, Thursday could be one of those days where you might wonder a little bit why school is canceled if we're not seeing widespread flooding by, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock when school's let out. It's not going to be super windy. It's going to be a nasty day on Thursday, no doubt about that. But it might have you wondering as a parent, like, was it really necessary to cancel school today? In a worst case scenario, we get enough rain localized tomorrow, and then the rain comes in fast on Thursday. The street flooding could be an issue Thursday afternoon. And if that's the case, that's why I think school could be canceled for some on Thursday as well. But Thursday night, Friday, that's when the weather really goes downhill. That's when we have the strong wind potential. And I think it's pretty high likelihood the schools will be canceled on Friday. What else? That's about it. Okay. Yeah, so how confident are forecasters with the pre-rainfall event? And I remember we forecasting a lot of rain from Francine, but that did not verify at all. It's a good question. It's not exactly the same setup, and we've talked about that a lot in the Weather Center, is that if we don't have places that get 2 or 3 inches of rain tomorrow, then we might have to slice those rainfall totals back to 4 to 7 or 4 to 8 or something like that. However, all the computer models are in pretty good agreement that there will be some spots, probably not everyone, that gets 2, 3, 4 inches of rain tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. And so for that reason, I would say our confidence in the antecedent rainfall, we call it, the rain that's out ahead of the tropical system, is fairly high, actually, that some will get it. It's not a widespread rain event tomorrow. But it will be a rain event that will have an impact, a big impact for some. There's one more thing I want to show you before I take one last peek at your questions and get back to work in the Weather Center. So this is the amount of atmospheric moisture that's in the air. And right now, there's some. Obviously, it was, 90 degrees again today. I was going to look at it. This might be one of the hottest stretches that we've had overall over, say, a 4-day span after September 20th. I'd say it's got to be at the top of the charts, but I'll take a look. And notice what happens here. By Wednesday afternoon, we start to get into that blue shading. And that is pretty high atmospheric moisture right there. So this is what we're looking at here. It's called precipitable water. It's the amount of rain that can come out of the atmosphere. And it's high on Wednesday by the afternoon. And then Wednesday night and into Thursday, you're just going to see it get supercharged. So now you got some dark blues showing up. And I think there's a good chance it's going to be pouring in many places Thursday afternoon. And then comes the tropical system. And that is where we get into the true tropical moisture. So if, as some of the computer models are projecting, there's 4, 5, 6 inches of rain that happens by 10 o'clock Thursday evening, we could be looking at when the core of the tropical system comes through, your rainfall rates, and you can see how quickly things dry out for us on Friday morning. When the core of that tropical system comes through, if it takes a track, as I just showed you, which is very close to Atlanta, if it takes that track, you can get 3 inches of rain in an hour. And if you've already gotten 6, now you're up to 9. And if it does it for 2 hours, you're up to 12. And that's where things can really get out of hand, because the rivers, the creeks, the streams all start to flood very, very quickly. And that's where things can unfortunately cause a lot of problems. I worry about, mobile homes or homes that just don't, ranch houses sometimes, because if you have a neighborhood that floods, you can really get some significant flooding damage into some of those houses. So that's what I'm most concerned about, and the fact that the heaviest rain may end up coming for us at night when those stronger winds are coming as well. All right, let's see what else. We will get updated tropical storm when the storm gets closer for sure. Yes, absolutely. Dee is Fulton County is right in the middle of this. Caleb's in Alpharetta, and it's going to be an issue for us as well. Numa works in Buckhead. Concerned about the trees. We live in the city in a forest. So Opal, which was a Category 3 hurricane that made landfall in 1995, made landfall western Panhandle area, I think, or maybe even southern Alabama or Mississippi, and then moved over Birmingham. I think it was Western Panhandle that it actually made landfall, but it moved over maybe just east of Birmingham. That storm, which did not pass right over Atlanta, but it was a tropical storm when it was moving through Alabama, downed 4,000 trees just in Atlanta alone, and brought up to 18 inches of rain to North Georgia. This one has the potential to be as strong but take a worse track. So that's why we're super concerned about what could happen in our area. Yeah, so Numo, the wind, it's going to come down to the exact track of the storm, but I would say that all of the metro should see some gusts around at least 40. In a worst case scenario, with the storm tracking closer, I think those gusts go up to around 60, which is, if that's the case, I've been here 5 years. I can count on, one hand the amount of times we've had 60-mile-an-hour gusts around the metro, and they always do a lot of damage. So hopefully that won't be the case. All right, Atomic X Blue saying they say the skyscrapers downtown act like artificial mountains could redirect some winds. Not really, not really. I'm trying to think of a way to put this. If the storm's a bucket of water, the skyscrapers downtown are a pebble. It's not really going to have much of an impact on that. If these hurricanes, tropical systems are massive. So I don't think that's going to play too much of a role. All right, stay with us. We're going to be doing updates frequently. When the new Hurricane Center track comes out, 11 o'clock, I'll have an update on the First Alert Weather app. Of course, we'll have that very first thing right off the top of our newscast at 11 o'clock. So check in with us then. Get prepared, get those phones charged up, keep them charged up, maybe get an external battery, and stay safe. We'll see you.